Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing every single book I read this year. I read 60 books, a little over 60 books, and we're gonna go through. I'm gonna show you what I read and just give a quick rating. So let's get into it. First book I read this year was Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. I ended up rating this 5 stars. I feel like Harry Potter is just so nostalgic for me. I can't really ever give them under 5 stars, but this was the first book I read this year. The next book I read this year was Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. This was my first Colleen Hoover book and it was interesting. I ended up rating this, I think, about a 4. Would I drop it down now? Probably. I'd probably give it like a 3.5, 3.75, just because it's not one of my favorite books. I did end up annotating it and I was shocked by, you know, the plot twist and stuff like that, but Colleen Hoover, Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter, 5 out of 5. I loved this book. I annotated this book and I read it during like summer. So I read it outside. It was beautiful. I love this book. I would always recommend this book. Then I got into my thriller kick. So Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. I ended up giving this 5 stars. I love Riley Sager's writing. You're gonna hear me say that a few times because I read a lot of his books this year and I can't wait to read more by him, but this thriller was crazy to me and it was like my first thriller ever, so I'm really glad that this was the first one I picked up. The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. This one, I gave it 3 stars. It just wasn't for me. I was a little confused. I just felt like it could have given me more and it didn't. So 3 stars for this one. Then I went back to Riley Sager and I read The House Across the Lake. This book is probably my favorite thriller of all time so far. I loved it. I was shocked. My jaw dropped. 10 out of 10. Recommend this book. I loved it. Then I went back to Lucy Foley with The Guest List. Like I said, I really had like a thriller kick midsummer. I don't know, it was weird. But this book, again, it just didn't do it for me. I do recommend this book over The Paris Apartment. This one I rated a 4 stars. So it was a little bit better. I enjoyed it a lot more than The Paris Apartment. Then we have Twisted Love. This was the first Anna Huang book I read. And again, romance, I was new to that this year. So some of the parts I was like, oh my god, what am I reading? But it was enjoyable. I ended up rating this 3.75. I enjoyed it, but it's not one of my favorite books of all time. Do I like her writing? Sure. Are they fun? Yes. And they usually are quick reads for me. Then I got into my like mystery romance because I was seeing these books everywhere. So I read A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, which I gave a 5 stars. I read Good Girl Bad Blood, which I gave a 5 stars. And then I gave As Good as Dead 4 stars, 4.5, somewhere in there. It felt rushed to me and a little unfinished, but these were all by Holly Jackson and I did enjoy these. These are like really fun, like fast reads, and I definitely recommend them because it does give you that like mystery sense of where you want to solve kind of what's happening. So these books were the next 3 I read in 2023. Then we went over to none other than Happy Place by Emily Henry. If you've watched any of my videos, you know I love this book. This has probably been one of my favorite reads, top reads this year. I love this book. I always say how many lessons there are within this book, and it's not just about the romance. It's about adulting, and I love this book so much. First, the cover is stunning, but I gave this 5 stars, 6 stars, you know. But a lot of people also don't, which I don't get, but to each their own. Then I had to go into another Emily Henry book because I loved Happy Place so much, and I read Beach Read. 5 stars. So far, I've loved every Emily Henry book I have read, which is just these 2 so far, but loved this book. Always would recommend this book as well. This, Better Than the Movies, Happy Place, some of my favorite summer reads. They were like perfect for the weather and just reading outside. I loved it. Then we got into some more kind of popular books. These are definitely more romance, but I read The Final Offer, which I gave a 4 stars. I did annotate all of these, but at the time, all of the books I've so far annotated, I did not write in them. I just tabbed them and that was it because I don't like writing in my books, but I gave this one a 4 stars. Then we have Terms and Conditions, which I loved as well. This one, again, 4 stars for me, but The Final Offer, I had to give 5 stars. I loved Cal and Alana's story so much. They were my favorite couple out of all of them, even though Rowan and Zara were really close seconds. I just loved the story behind this one, and I would reread this book. So this one definitely got a 5 stars. These were all by Lauren Asher, by the way. Next, I got into none other than ACOTAR. Guys, I'm so glad I read this series. I mentioned this once before, but I remember being into books and reading when these first came out. And the original covers, I always wanted to read them, but I was a little young at the time, so I never got to. And honestly, I'm so glad I waited until I was a little older to appreciate these books. But ACOTAR, I ended up giving 4 stars. I loved it. I don't want to say a lot about this series because I feel like there's already so much talked about, and I would just go into it if I were you and just feel all the feels. Then we have Ack'em which was my favorite book of the whole series. No words. I would give this 10 stars. I loved it. Then we have ACOWAR, which, again, I loved this book. I did tab all of these. A 5 star. I really enjoyed it. I couldn't put any of these books down. I swear I read all of them within a week. I know. Then we have A Court of Frost and Starlight. This one I knew going into it was a novella, so it wasn't going to blow my socks off, you know. So I ended up giving this 3 stars. I feel like it gave me what I wanted. It's not an impactful book. Like, it's just a little side story, and I enjoyed it. I did. Then finally we have A Court of Silver Flames. I had to give this like 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed this more than I thought I would, and I knew going into it was going to be slower because it wasn't following Feyre, it was following her sister. So I knew it wasn't going to, you know, be my top book, but I still really enjoyed it and I would still recommend it. Sorry. Chain of Thorns. I'm holding up the wrong book. I read Chain of Thorns by Cassandra Clare. This book disappointed me, and I've talked about this before. I was expecting so much because I loved this whole entire series, the Last Hour series. I loved the first 2 books, but when it came to the 3rd one, I was just confused. I felt like there was a lot of information that wasn't necessary, and it just felt rushed in the end. So I could only give it about 3 stars. Again, I was very disappointed because Cassandra Clare is one of my favorite authors ever. She's the one that really got me into reading, and I just expected a little bit more, and that's okay. Then we get into Throne of Glass. Like I said, I took a little break, and then I read this entire series, right? Crazy. So we have, quickly, Throne of Glass. I read this first because I originally read the first 4 books years ago. So when I first read the books, I started with Assassin's Blade. So I figured I'll start differently this time around. Throne of Glass, I gave it 4 stars. Assassin's Blade, I ended up reading after Crown of Midnight, but this one I also gave 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I love her, like, writing her stories. Her ideas are just crazy to me. Crown of Midnight, I ended up giving 4 stars as well. Sorry, I'm looking at my stars. Heir of Fire ended up giving 5 stars. I really enjoyed this book. This kind of leads up to all of the action. A lot of this is like backstory leading up to what's going to happen in this book. So this book, everything took off and I loved it. Queen of Shadows, which was one of my favorite books. I gave this a 5 star. I loved Queen of Shadows. 10 out of 10. Then we have Empire Storms, which I also loved. 5 out of 5 stars. And I did do the tandem reading. So I read both of these books at the same time, and it was a lot, but honestly going back and forth was like really nice refresher, and it didn't feel like it took that long. Plus I finished 2 books at the same time. This one 5 stars. This Tower of Dawn I only ended up giving 4 stars. It is a little slow at times, so it's hard because all the action is happening over here and you're kind of off with someone else, and it's like, come on, I just want to know what happens. And then lastly, Kingdom of Ash. 10 stars. I'm not even kidding. This book altered the way I think about reading. I don't even have words for how that book made me feel. I was sobbing, I was laughing, I was crying, sobbing, same thing, but I loved it. I loved everything about those. Then we get into Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. I gave a 5 star. Really, really enjoyed this. I actually was shocked that I enjoyed this so much because I'm someone that if it's really, really hyped up, I'm usually worried that I'm not gonna like it, but I did enjoy this. This was different. Dragons, never read a book with dragons in it before, other than like Harry Potter, but that doesn't really count. I loved this book, and after that I went into Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. This one shocked me because I did not think I was going to enjoy it as much as I did. I just was unsure about the concept, but I did enjoy it. I gave it 4.75 stars, so very, very close to a 5 star. I just couldn't give it that top tier, but it's still a really good book. And I read Twisted Games by Anna Huang. Again, these are really good like fillers for me when I feel like I've read a lot of fantasy, or I feel like I'm kind of hitting a wall with like I don't know what to read, so I just pick up one of these books. This book I ended up giving a 4 star. I did enjoy this one more than I enjoyed Twisted Love, and I do have the 3rd book, so we'll see if I read that this year. A River Enchanted by Rebecca Ross. So I decided to pick up another book by her, and if you watched my book tag video, you know my feelings about this book. I did not enjoy it at all. It was so slow. I almost DNF'd it. But because I finished it, I gave it a 3 star. I can understand why people would love it. I just don't. I don't. It was very slow. I couldn't even tell you what happened. I know there was a river and some notes and a guy and a girl. That's about it. That's all I know. So I did not enjoy this book. The Only One Left by Riley Sager, because this had just come out. I loved this book. 5 out of 5 stars. It was everything I wanted. I had chills. I was just shocked. I loved it so much. I definitely recommend Riley Sager if you want to get into thrillers. Shatter Me by Tahira Mafi. This one I ended up giving a 3 star. So it's an opening book, so it's hard to get into a whole new series. And this is more dystopian, so a little bit different than what I'm used to reading like currently. So 3 stars. I did enjoy it. I did read Destroy Me right after this, and I also gave that 3 stars. It was okay. It just wasn't one of my favorites. Read Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren. First of all, this cover is stunning, and I loved this book. 5 stars for me. And I feel like I keep saying 5 stars, but I usually don't give a book 5 stars unless I love it. So I did really, really love this book. It was amazing. I read Dance of Thieves and Vow of Thieves by Mary E. Pearson. I gave Dance of Thieves 4 stars, and then I gave Vow of Thieves 5 stars. I loved these 2 books. It's only a duology, so I was a little bit disappointed because when you love a book so much, you just want it to keep going, and it ended. So these 2 books I read, and I did enjoy them. I definitely recommend them if you want something like fantasy-esque, romance kind of thing. I would recommend these 2 books. Then She Was Gone by Lisa Jewell. I don't know. This book was good, but when I was rating it, if you look at my Goodreads, the reason I keep looking down is because I'm looking at my ratings. That way I know I get them right, because some of them they've changed. So if I'm looking and I've put like a 5 star, I'll change it to what I think now. But Then she was gone. I ended up giving a 4 stars, but I am stuck between like a 3 and 4 stars. I feel like I was just so lost. There was a scene in here that I just felt uncomfortable. Yeah, that's all I'm gonna go with for this one, is I just feel a little uncomfortable. The Last Letter by Rebecca Yarros. I loved this book. Again, I didn't think I would love it, and I think it was partially the cover. I didn't read the back, so I didn't know anything going into the book. I loved it. I loved it. I was crying at work. 10 out of 10. It's on Kindle Unlimited, so check it out if you have a Kindle, because you will fly through it. I loved this book. 5 stars. If He Had Been With Me by Laura Nolan. This book, I knew people said it made them cry. I didn't understand, you know, until I was standing there reading, and I just, waterworks. I was shocked. I did not expect the ending at all. I loved it. Well, I didn't love it, but the book itself was really good and really cute, and I had a lot of feelings after this book, and not all were happy. The Red Scrolls of Magic is the first book in the Eldest Curses kind of series by Cassandra Clare and Wesley Chu. This book, I didn't really love it. It was very slow. I kind of just wanted it to be over with. I ended up rating this a 3 stars, and I would stick to that. It was okay. It was entertaining, but it was towards the end of the book, like 70% of the way through. I was like, oh, this is really entertaining. And then it ended. So it just wasn't my favorite book this year, and I am going to still give the next one a try because I have it. So I'm going to read it. I just don't know when. The Housemaid by Frida McFadden is a book I ended up reading around like Halloween in October. I ended up rating this 4 stars. I did enjoy this. I do want to read the second one. It was such an interesting concept, and I was shocked. I was like the whole time like, who is the person I'm supposed to be mad at? Who's like, what is happening basically? It's creepy, it's cool, it's everything I kind of wanted going into Halloween. I read none other than Powerless by Lauren Roberts. I loved this book. One of my favorite books this year. I recommend this book to anyone who wants a romantasy, a fast-paced book with action. I loved this book. I cannot wait for her next one to come out. I don't know if I've pre-ordered it yet, but I've definitely looked. Actually, I definitely think I did pre-order it, but I love this book, and I cannot wait to read more from Lauren Roberts because her writing is stunning. Unravel Me, which I ended up rating a 4 stars. Then I read Ignite Me, which so far has been my favorite book in the whole series, which I've actually heard a lot about. Is a lot of people have actually said this is their favorite book. I just happen to be one of them. And then Restore Me went back down to a 4 star. So these are definitely better than the first book and then novella. I definitely think these 3, everything kind of picks up. You want to know what's happening. They're very quick reads. So I love reading them in between books, or if I just need a refresher, or if I just want to go back to something that's like, I know, you know the story already. I don't have to start somewhere new. Both Crescent City books. So we have House of Earth and Blood, and then we have House of Sky and Breath. I love these books. These are big books, 900 pages each. Ended up rating both of them 5 stars. And this book, I have not stopped thinking about since I've read it. I've probably thought about it every single week. I cannot wait for the 3rd one to come out literally next month. In a month from now, actually. So happy I read this book. I wish did I record my reaction? I might have recorded my reaction to this book. Loved these. I would reread them if they weren't so long. We read Order of the Phoenix, the 5th book. I was a little unsure, but Brian actually picked this for one of my month's like TBRs. So I had to read it because it was on my TBR, you know, and I did just need to get through it because they're so big, and I've kind of talked about this where it's hard for me to go to this series because I already kind of have an idea of what happens, whereas I have no idea what's happening in these, so I almost feel like I'm missing out if I'm spending so much time on a book that I kind of know what's happening. But this book actually shocked me because there was a lot that happened in the book that didn't happen in the movie, and it was just, I was blown away. It was really good. It was entertaining. It was fast. Everything you want. Also, these are on Kindle Unlimited too. So just a little tip. Then Iron Flame came out and I was feeling FOMO, basically. So I had to pick this book up even though it wasn't on my TBR. I had to pick it up. I ended up reading it and I gave it a 4 stars. So this book I did really love. It just, there was something missing. A lot of the time I was like, what's happening again? Who is this person? I'm trying to imagine things and they're just not like coming to my brain correctly. So I couldn't give it a 5 stars for that reason, but I did really love it. And I love all of the like mind communication. I love that. So I'm really happy about this book. And there's a big gap. So I think the next book should be a little bit better, a little bit more finished than this book was. Into Wreck the Halls by Tessa Bailey. This was my second Tessa Bailey book. Again, I did not enjoy this book. This book might have been my least favorite book of all. It was so slow. I mean, it's a short book. It's not even 400 pages, not even 350 pages. And I just didn't love it. I didn't know what it was about going into it. So I always said, like in my videos, read the back before you read it, because I bet if it's like your cup of tea, you'll probably enjoy it. I just wanted like a cute Christmas romance. There was like hardly any Christmas in this. So disappointed because I started Throne of the Fallen by Carrie Maniscalco. Eventually I'll be able to say her last name. I'm just saying. I don't know if I said it right, but this book I really loved. I ended up giving it a 4 stars, but honestly I would probably give it like a 4.5. I really liked this book and I have thought about it since reading it a few times. So, plus the cover. Stunning! Getting to the last few books. Oh, I'm missing a book. Found it. I read The Stolen Heir by Holly Black. This book, I listened to it on audiobook. This was the first audiobook I've ever listened to, and I think it was just the information. I was so confused. I didn't really know what was happening. I wasn't super intrigued. I felt like the plot line kind of fell short for me, but maybe again, I just didn't understand what was happening. So 3 stars for this book. Got into The Night Circus, which I'm so glad I got this off my shelf because I have had this on my shelf forever since they basically came out with the book. This is by Erin Morgenstern and I listened to this on audiobook as well. I loved this book. I gave it a 4 stars. It was super magical, super interesting. I loved all of the different like storylines. Basically, you're following different characters. I really enjoyed that, and this was a very different book for me. You know, it's circus, so it's magic, and so I really enjoyed that aspect of this book. The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. I really enjoyed this book as well. It was very interesting. I rated this 4 stars. The second book does come out soon, and this was my first vampire book, so kind of crazy. I feel like the romance is so different because he's a vampire, if you know what I mean, but I really enjoyed this book. It was very fast-paced because of all the action, and so this definitely got a 4 stars for me. Then we have our 2 last books. I finally read Flawless by Elsie Silver. First cowboy romance, and I enjoyed it. It was a very quick read. It was cute. It gave me everything I wanted. I went into it, didn't read the back, and I enjoyed it. So I gave this a 4 stars. I'm excited to read more of this series. Then the book I actually finished last night. It was probably 11 o'clock at night and I was just reading this. This was on Kindle and this was on Kindle. And I read this in 2 days. Hooked by Emily McIntyre. I was very interested going into this book because Peter Pan is one of my favorite stories basically as a kid until now, and this was a spin-off. It was a very aggressive at times. There is a, what's it called, like a warnings, what is that called, basically it gives you like a warning. I can't think of the word, but gives you a warning at the beginning of this book just about some of the topics it discusses, and I did enjoy it. It was very different for me, and it was different to think of that story in this perspective. But do I want to read more of this series? Yes, because it was very entertaining and I enjoyed seeing kind of the different plays on the characters versus the movies. That is all of the books I read in 2023. I am so excited for this next year. I feel like it's going to be an amazing reading year. I am shocked by how many of these books actually go on my shelf. If you look up, I have like no books on my shelf anymore. They are all next to me. But if you guys enjoyed this video, please give it a like and comment what your favorite book this year was. Give me any book recommendations that I haven't read this year that you want me to read, and I will definitely look into those. I will see you in the next video. Bye.